money isn't evil. It's a way to measure value.
It's also become incredibly pervasive in our culture to say, oh, why are you making this person uncomfortable? If this offends somebody, you're wrong.
How are you supposed to see truth if everyone around you is just being nice?
Yeah. I thought that I should be a bad person, but after reading this quote, I realize I should be a good person instead. If you haven't noticed already, we very much like challenging what other people like to say in terms of just looking at what are the flaws in this statement. You know, maybe we should rethink this.
So welcome to another episode of that.
And so basically, it's funny because Isla and I both go to a taekwondo studio, and they'll have these messages of the month that are like famous quotes from people. And it's been fun for us to kind of like pick apart, like, does this really make sense? And so we came across one that we kind of wanted to pick apart because I would say it's kind of a general representation of some colloquial like wisdom that people have of like, oh yeah, you should do this. And like, that's just something that everybody says, but doesn't necessarily think through very much.
So it's called 10 Things That Will Never Fail You.
Yeah. So that's like the perfect start, you know? So I'll just read the full quote. It says, 10 things that will never fail you. Honesty, integrity, hard work, being nice, being excellent at what you do, exceeding expectations, spending less than you earn, saving as much as you possibly can, being charitable with your time, talents, and money, and your sense of humor. And so basically we kind of broke up our rating system of like what are the first principles of what makes a quote like this actually valuable. So one is like relevance, also known as like, also you could also think of this as like timelessness, right? Is this something that will be relevant maybe even 100 years into the future, right? And then there's like also applicability, how applicable is this in your life?
Like if it's be a good person, that's it has awful applicability because everyone thinks they're being a good person.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Then also another metric you could use is like how much influence will this actually have? Which kind of gets to like your example of be a good person. Like if everybody thinks that they're being a good person, that quote isn't going to have an influence. People are like, oh yeah, I should really just be a good person. You know, like I thought that I should be a bad person, but after reading this quote, I realize I should be a good person instead, right? And then, so then the two other metrics is one of value and communication. Sometimes a quote can be like really well worded, and the fact that maybe it was said by some reputable famous person is a good thing for you to be able to communicate something to somebody else. And then the last but most important aspect is this statement true?
If it isn't true, none of the other things really count because
in fact, if it's not true and it's very influential, then that's even more bad. So the first thing that will never fail you is honesty. And I would say I actually like this one.
I think honesty is really good. I think generally, if you're always honest, you're going
to upset some people.
You're going to upset some people, and it's going to put you in some hard spots sometimes.
Yeah.
But generally, I think
in the long term, honesty is always better.
In the long term, it's always better to just always be honest. And I think, you know,
we just have all these little things.
All these little things that we want to
You just came out of the bathroom and you were crying in the bathroom. So it's like, how are you doing today?
I'm fine.
So yeah, I think that there's just a lot of ways in which, you know, in the moment, it doesn't feel good to be honest, but I think it's good in the long term.
There are always things.
Although I don't know how influential this quote is because everybody always tells you to be honest.
Yeah, and everyone always thinks that they want to be honest, but you can give a lot of excuses for yourself.
Right.
I think in today's world, yes, it is always best to be honest in the long term. Mm-hmm. But in terms of relevance and timelessness, because like back then, the punishments were so severe.
Yeah, if you were honest, like, oh yeah, I actually didn't worship our dictator this morning. They're like, okay, we're gonna behead you now.
Bye-bye. And so, like, no. And so relevance and timelessness, no. But I think in today's world, it's definitely true. But in terms of value in communication and, like, in terms of, like, actually having influence in people's lives, I don't think it works very well.
I think a lot of people say you should be honest and don't really talk about why. You know, they're just thinking true. So and like why it actually really benefits you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So the second one is integrity, and I don't like this one because I think it's like, how is that really different from like honesty? And I think in some ways a lot of these are kind of synonyms. In some ways it might be.
Integrity is sort of like, it's like saying that someone should be good, you know, where it's like, who's going to disagree with integrity?
Yeah. So some of these things are just like, oh, like, obviously. Duh. And then it's like, okay.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah. And so the next thing is hard work. For a lot of things, like, you do need to work hard in life, generally, to be successful.
But it's better to work
But to say that it will never fail you, that hard work will never fail you, if you're working really, really hard on the wrong thing, yes, it will fail you. If you're working really hard, climbing that ladder on the wrong wall, you're going to look down and be like, wow, I should not have worked that hard.
Yeah.
That was really dumb.
Yeah, and it's like, I think a lot of people will think it's really easy to just think that you will always win and you will always come out better if you just work hard, because that's a very, very simple metric.
That's true.
But
so it's kind of just like, okay, work hard when you're positive that, like, you know, you can never be 100% sure. But when you have a very strong conviction that what you're doing is going to be helpful, and generally that'll come from, like, having at least 5 reasons to do something. That's not just one reason, but you also know that, like, I'm going to learn something in this process. I'm going to grow in my relationships. You know, I'm going to, gain more influence. Like, if you have a lot of reasons backing up why you're doing something, like, go ahead and, like, work hard. But then also to the extent that it will actually, you generally will get some diminishing returns based off of, like, whatever it is that you're doing. Like, for example, with these podcasts, we could get 80% there with 20% of the effort, and just, like, not spend a lot of time preparing and just, like, kind of sit down and hit record. That would be easy. But when it comes to, like, okay, we know that this is something that's very valuable to do.
Yeah.
Right. And for a long time we didn't. Like, for a long time we did not try on YouTube because we weren't trying to gain influence. We know there's a lot of problems with social media. And we were just kind of using it as a communication device for our students and for people that we engage with on WeQual it's like, we'll make a video and we'll share it with those people. And not necessarily trying to, like, have millions of people watching it or anything. But it's like
celebrity.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, once this kind of hit a point where it was like, there's a lot of reasons why we should be doing it, we're like, okay, we're just going to work hard and make it happen.
We have a clearly defined goal for why. And I think there are things that you need to do that you just want to satisfy. Yeah. Like with our yard. We were never one to obsess about having the grass perfectly green.
We need our little shrubs to be perfectly spherical.
Yeah. And it's like, obviously, we can't let it turn into a jungle. We have to mow the grass. But if there's a little tuft of grass that was missed, it's not the end of the world, and we just need to satisfy. And it's fine because it's not very important.
Yeah. So the next one is to be nice. I kind of find this one really frustrating. And it's not because I go out of my way to be mean to people, but I would say that it's kind of like this surface level of, I want to prevent uncomfortable feelings in the moment. And sometimes that's at sacrifice of long-term success in your relationships. And sometimes it's like, if somebody really needs to hear something because they are, doing something that's bad for themselves. And it's like, it's not just like, oh, I know it's better for this person, but it's like, from my perspective, if I see that somebody that I care about is doing something that's detrimental for themselves, I'm going to let them know my perspective. Not because I assume that I know what's best for them or that I know what they should do with their life, but because I care about them. So I'm going to share my perspective.
Care about people. How about that instead of being nice? Because be nice can definitely fail you.
Yeah.
It can fail other people around you all the time. Like that. This is something that's like, how are you supposed to see truth if everyone around you is just being nice and is like telling you what you want to hear and stuff like that? And I think that there's like a difference between the words nice and the word compassion and the word nice and the word kind and the word nice and the word care, because being nice is just those surface level emotions and just trying to avoid uncomfortableness. Whereas actually caring and actually having compassion for people is willing to trudge through the swamp and the weeds and all of that because you know it's going to end up having a good result.
Yeah, it's just kind of like this thing that we'll always say to especially children. It's like, make sure you guys be nice. And it's kind of like, but I would say it's also become incredibly pervasive. It's also become incredibly pervasive in our culture to say, oh, why are you making this person uncomfortable? You shouldn't make anybody uncomfortable ever. Like, if this offends somebody, you're wrong. So the next thing is being excellent at what you do will never fail you. And I would say that, and then the next one, this is also like basically the same as the next one, which is exceeding expectations. And I would say both of these things, it's kind of like you need to know when to satisfy.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like you can just try to spend so much effort on every single little thing. Like, I could spend 2 hours every day making sure that everything in our kitchen is perfectly organized.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I could also like spend 20% of that effort and get most of the way there. You know, it's like, and in some cases it's like I was like with our development team on the app and like what we're doing with the school, we don't want to satisfy there. We want to provide an excellent experience for everybody that joins and that, you know, joins the school. So are we going to exceed expectations there? Oh yeah, definitely. Like, yes, we are. But it's like, are we going to exceed expectations on every aspect of our life? No, because there's only so much time in the day. You know, you need priorities.
Yeah, I think generally with these, like, being excellent and exceeding expectations, it's a good rule of thumb. You don't want your default to be, oh, slack off.
Right.
But, you know, if you have to be perfect at all that you do, you can't do a lot of things.
All right, so one thing I don't like about this quote is there's like a lot of repeated stuff, but the next two is spending less than you earn and saving as much as you possibly can, which is kind of getting to the same concept of like save as much money as possible. I think I like this one in general.
I think there are differences between those two.
Yeah. We can take it one at a time. Spending less than you earn, I would say like generally
good rule of thumb.
Yeah, is like, you know, unless barring extreme circumstances, that should probably be your default.
But saving as much as you possibly can, I think, is very, very different because, and I'll explain.
Yeah, sure.
If we saved as much as we possibly could, we would be living right now in a shack in the middle of a woods. We would not have the setup to record this podcast because we saved as much as we possibly could, and we didn't buy anything that wasn't essential to survival.
Right.
I think there are a lot of levels that people can take this, but if you take it literally, that is what we would be doing right now. We would be desperately trying to survive.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I would say that the problem with like saying save as much as you possibly can is that it doesn't allow for taking calculated risks and investing in future possibilities, which is like what we're doing with this podcast and also what we're doing when, you know, we're starting a new business and then we're going to be paying for different services there. All right, so the next thing is to be charitable with your time, talents, and money. I think there's a lot of people who get a lot of fulfillment from, I spent a lot of time with, you know, this one student in my class, and, you know, people feel that so much like positive, you know, enjoyment of like, I just, you know, saw the spark in their eyes light up, and it's like, it just like feels really, really good when you can be charitable like that and you can see the real impact.
Yeah.
I would say that for a lot of people, that's a great thing to do. But also at the same time, I would say that there's also the opportunity of thinking about what is the maximal value that I can add with all of my abilities and all of the things that I have access to. And that's what a lot of these innovators that you read about, like, Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, many of them aren't the most nurturing kinds of people, but they are thinking a lot about what are the biggest problems in the world and how can I maximally add value? And generally that's going to be something that scales and isn't something that
where you're just giving out your time and your talents to everybody.
Yeah.
One thing that I think should also be touched on is that when I start little businesses all the time, I think when I first started my dog sitting business, I didn't know if I should charge, and I ended up charging. But I think money isn't evil. It's a way to measure value. And if you never ask for anything in exchange, how do you even know that what you're providing is that valuable? Maybe people took it because it's
free. It's
because
like,
it's
oh,
free.
might
It's
as well.
Why not?
And that also incentivized you, like,
yeah,
I'm charging. You're like charging above market rate in some cases, and but that also incentivizes you to provide above market value.
Yeah,
and you're like, sending all of these cute, amazing doggy photos to the clients and like making sure that they have an amazing experience. And if you weren't charging anything, you might just like, oh well, I'm not even charging anything, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's like part of it is understanding like what am I worth and how can I improve to make myself worth more, and so just thinking, you could have been very charitable with your time, but I would say that by actually charging, it was a win-win situation.
If you have really amazing talents, and you have, and your time is very valuable, those aren't things you just want to throw around willy-nilly,
Because part of it is the accountability piece of like, are people willing to pay for this, right? And if not, why? Like, how can I improve, right? What's actually missing here? All right, so the last point here is something that will never fail you is your sense of humor.
Yeah, that fails me.
Yeah,
okay,
your sense of humor fails. Yeah, it's so many jokes just fall flat on their face and cannot be revived, and it's not even very funny pathetic. that how unfunny it is. Sometimes it's funny when it's unfunny, but sometimes it's just not. Sometimes it's like, goodbye.
Goodbye.
We're done here. So, but I mean, I would say that it's generally
we can just end it at that. I'm just kidding.
well, generally I like the advice of just like, don't take yourself too seriously, don't take life too seriously.
Yeah.
I like that advice. And
that's
just
one way you can interpret
it.
Yeah,
and also just to like bring humor to situations. I think humor is something that it's just incredibly interesting how what makes something funny, it's such a complex emotion, and so I do think that it is very important and it's good for people to try to cultivate in their lives.
Just the problem with this quote is that it's like 10 things that will never fail you. And it's very extreme because, of course, all of these, everything has a time and a place. So, use your own judgment.
Yeah. A lot of, general wisdom that people share around, it really is in need of individuals being able to critically think about how to apply it in your life, because the thing is that there are no right answers about how you should spend your time. That's always something that you have to critically engage with. And I would say that this is one of the biggest problems with our education system, is that you're relying on some authority figure to tell you, oh yeah, you're doing good, keep doing that good thing.
Yeah.
When it's like, what you really need to be able to do is to be able to understand yourself, understand the world, understand your options.
How are you going to have motivation to do the right things if you don't even know why.
Yeah. And so I would say that this is the biggest reason why we like kind of sometimes tearing apart of some of the things that people will throw around, is that it's like it's honing that skill of being able to think for yourself. And I would say that now more than ever, that's incredibly important.